Welcome to the Introverted Doctor podcast. This is a special episode where I interviewed Mark Bowden. He's the leading world expert on body language and how to communicate. He's written 4 bestsellers that deals with the whole concept of communication, body language, what we do right, wrong. He's a consultant to many of the celebrities, politicians, Fortune 500 companies. It was really an honor to have him as a guest speaker here. We talked about all kinds of things, from his struggle with dyslexia to the mistakes that people make when they're trying to connect with people, about manipulation, good manipulation, bad manipulation. We talked about the mistakes that doctors make, clinicians make in trying to connect with people. We covered so much ground and territory. We also talked about his experience in theater and how that led into his current role. And we also talked a lot about magic and illusions and some of the ideas behind that. I really think you're going to love this episode. And so without further ado, we'll just start, and I hope you enjoy this. Mark, I got to tell you, I am super excited to have you here on the podcast, and welcome to the show.
Well, I'm happy to be here, happy to be with you and answer any questions that you've got, you and your audience.
Well, I got to tell you, I've had trouble sleeping last few nights because of knowing that I'm going to be speaking with you today, and all the knowledge that you've talked about with body language and the things you taught us when you gave the keynote at the Schulich School of Medicine. I mean, it literally blew me out of the water, and a lot of the doctors who were sitting beside me. I think you really dispelled, you broke down some myths and mistakes that many of us make in the clinical setting. So I was so taken aback by your keynote. And I want to get into all that maybe just a little bit later, but I want to start off the interview with kind of, you and I have some similarities in that in my earlier life, I was an illusionist and I did a lot of theater and I took drama classes in university, and I did dance. And so I learned some parts of body language and movement. But you, if I understand it correctly, you started off in theater. And so can you tell me how that led you to your current status, to becoming the number one leader in body language and communication?
Yeah. So what happened is as a kid, I was really obsessed with movement and animal movement, human movement, just the natural world, the way it moved, why it moved. Then I got quite obsessed with just the movement of humans and imagery, how imagery, and especially our bodies and the way our bodies move, affect people's minds. And I got into visual art, and then from that into visual theater. So a really specific area of theater and film and TV, where you're using the moving images to affect the way that people are thinking and feeling. So it was really about, how do you change people's emotions, their feelings, with the moving images that you can play them? And are there some universal triggers out there? Are there some things that you can do anywhere in the world that will kind of get you very much the same results? So I got really obsessed with that. And then people in business and politics came to me and said, and they knew the work that I was doing within theater around that, and film and TV. And they said, can you do that with people in business and within politics who are presenting and trying to change people's minds, trying to influence and persuade? I said, yeah, I reckon I can. And that's when I got into the area of, I guess, performance training for people in business and politics, with this specific thing of my expertise by then in body language, or what many people call nonverbal communication. But I just kind of call it moving pictures and influence and persuasion via moving pictures. It then so happened that I got asked to write books, and so I've got 4 books now on human behavior and body language. And so here I am. I guess I've just done a lot more than most other people, written more than most other people, looked at it more than most other people, come up with some ideas that nobody else ever came up with. I mean, that's true. There's some thoughts that I've had and some models that I've created around nonverbal communication, which are unique and very, very powerful. And that's what has really kind of marked me out in the world of body language.
Well, you've really worked with some really top-notch people in theater. You've had some amazing mentors.
Yeah.
How has that influenced your ability? Because I'm sure that really honed your skill set and knowledge.
Yeah, so I'm fortunate. Not by luck. I mean, I went out there to get it. It was no luck involved. But I was fortunate to be driven enough to go and find and study with and get alongside ultimately some of the best people in the world in visual theatre. And so I was able to work alongside some people who are legendary in that area and become, to much of an extent, peers alongside them. So it really meant when I brought that world of theatre to performance training, I mean, what many people would call presentation training, really, speaker training. I mean, there are many people out there who are bringing acting skills to that and some understandings of theatre. But it just so happens that the level of understanding that I'm bringing from the theatre is at a quite elite, rarefied, extreme level. Working alongside some of the most groundbreaking people in theatre, bringing that to presentation skills means that I'm able to cut through in a way that many other people who've been in acting or been in theatre or been in film and TV just aren't able to do. I was really at the cutting edge of theatre when I was there.
Well, when I read your books, it was really evident that, you not only brought the theater aspect of it, but you also, there's the science behind it, and you really thought things through. Now, to be honest with you, I've seen people talk about body language, and then to hear you speak when you spoke at the keynote and your TED talk that you did in Toronto really blew everything I had thought I knew out of the water. So and also being in theater, it really adds to the knowledge and skill set. I know that certainly made me a better clinician and communicator, but you really took it to another level. And I think that's why you've been so successful. It's really evident.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm thinking in a very different way about it. When I was in theatre, film and TV, and as a performer myself, we were all thinking in our area, we were all thinking about that in a very different way. It's true to say the work that we were doing revolutionized and renovated theatre around the late 80s, early 90s. You wouldn't be watching the theatre that you're watching right now if we hadn't have been doing that work back then. And so I bring that work to the work of performance training for presentation skills, for speakers, for keynote speakers, business speakers, political speakers. I'm bringing that innovative work, which is a different way of thinking about performance, about communication, and really trying to understand at a fundamental level how it's working on us, how we as human beings work with each other socially, how we think about each other, how we're influenced and persuaded by each other. And again, especially in this world of the image and movement. One of my mentors, a guy called Jacques Lecoq, one of his phrases was, "Tout bouge, everything moves, everything moves." Now, think about that.
Yeah.
we're moving right now. We're circling the sun. The sun is spiraling through the galaxy at extraordinary speeds. The matter of my body right now in this room is moving right now. Everything moves. The only thing that would stop even the atoms moving would be to go to absolute zero. And that's not going to happen. So at least from the science that I can tell, we're not going to absolute zero. We're moving all the time. We are a moving universe. And so, we were thinking in those terms, if what links every piece of matter in the universe is that everything moves, well, that's an extraordinary premise on which to start creating from. And so, I still, even though I'm doing business keynotes and I'm training business people and politicians and keynote speakers myself, really, I still see myself as an artist, in that I'm trying to remind people that they're alive, trying to remind everybody that we are physical matter, because often people get very psychological, they get very spiritual as well, and they forget that this is real moving stuff all the time. And that is an extraordinary thing, to know that we are physical matter and we are linked by movement all the time. So, to your point there, I've just been thinking in a different way than most other people in body language. That's why the books are so different, and that's why I've been given the accolades that I have, is that people in body language as well were going, wow, we haven't seen this before. We haven't thought about it in that way before. It's been totally unique the way I've approached it.
Well, what I love about it is that your teachings are simple yet elegant. And, once I had read your books, I was able to see why is it that when I'm watching another speaker or connecting with other people or trying to connect, why am I not connecting? And so much had to do with, the different planes you talk about. Yeah. And I really want to get into that in a bit. But I want to ask you a question. As an actor and performer, I have my own biases or my own thought on this, but, people see me, if they've seen me speak as an illusionist, and they know when I was on stage and, doing 2-hour stage shows when I used to do that, and then currently speaking, people think I'm an extrovert. And what is your thoughts about actors and performers? Are they extroverts? Are they all extroverts? Or there's introverts? I just would like to hear your perspective on that.
So most of the ones that I've met that I think are exceptionally good artists and performing artists, i.e. they communicate their art via a performance, by something that happens once for an audience, for a viewer. Their art is not something that is distributed on their own. It's not communicated for themselves. Most of them, if not all, that I think are any good, I've experienced are any good, are really introverts. In that they are real thinkers about what they're doing and why they're doing it, and they will take time to truly think through the possibilities and think about why and how and where and when and with whom, and they'll think deeply about these things at many different levels, and then they go out and they do it. So actors are called actors because they do action. Actors really shouldn't think. That's for philosophers. That's not that they shouldn't think outside of acting, but when you're acting, you must do, because you're an actor. You're to do action. Outside of that, you should be a thinker, a philosopher. You should be introverted for sure. Yes, you should be social as well. You got to hang around with other artists and you got to talk about it and you got to discuss it and get things going. But that can be done. But you got to think about it before you think about you go about how you act, and then you must act and only act. You must do the action. And so at that point, actors can look very extrovert. It can look like, oh, they're not thinking about this. They're just there in the moment doing it. And that's true. They are, and they should be. And that's why they're so compelling, because they're a force of nature. It's like having an animal there with you. It's like when you watch a bird, you look at a bird and you go, the bird isn't thinking, bird's just doing stuff. You look at a fox isn't thinking, it's just doing stuff. But what we've not noticed about the actor is the thought that's gone into it beforehand and the community that they've been part of around that thinking. So yeah, on stage, I will totally look like an extrovert, and people will go, God, it's got to be extraordinary around your house because it must be amazing to be. It's like, I don't do that around that. That would be a nightmare to live with. I'm already a nightmare to live with as an introvert. You know, you'd be even more of a nightmare as an extrovert, because I wouldn't be thinking at all. I'd just be doing stuff and getting myself into so much trouble by not thinking properly about stuff before I do it.
Well, the reality is you can't write 4 books and be an extrovert. I mean, there's so much thinking involved.
Right.
I know when my 13-year-old daughter, she said when she heard the podcast title was The Introverted Doctor, she goes, "You're not an introvert. I mean, what are you talking about?" She said, when you're performing and stuff like that, and, and she sees the goofy side of me. But she also, then I had to explain to her, I said, as an introvert, you need a lot of downtime. You need recharge. And even in performing, I think I really think the key to why I was successful when I was doing magic shows and big stage shows was that there was a lot of thought in terms of movement, the sequencing of the illusions that I would do, and create the variability, the music, the lighting, and the dance of performing. And so there's a real purpose to what you're doing. And so I can totally relate to what you're talking about.
Yeah, so it really is thinking about that and thinking about, let's call it the choreography of that, where there are no mistakes in the practice that you've created, that you've thought about everything. So that in my view, when you get on stage with that audience, you're at a level whereby mistakes can happen and they become something more wonderful rather than, that play with the audience, that to have your mind free, to have practiced, for example, the movement so much that your mind is free and your body is free to respond to what's happening in the audience. I'm sure you've experienced when you've managed to practice an illusion to such an extent that it kind of just happens even for you.
Well,
and
absolutely.
You can watch the audience. You can watch the magic happen in the audience's mind and eyes. You can see that you've truly created something true and real for them, and a place of wonder for them.
Well, one of the reasons I still love performing magic and doing that is that because it's so automatic. When I see the illusion unfold in front of me, especially when I'm doing like close-up magic, I myself am amazed as like, what? How did that happen? Like what? And because it's all, I've done so much practice that the thinking about it is gone, and I think people they get entertained because they look like I'm surprised as much as they are, and that's the fun part of performing is there's that spontaneity of what happens with the audience, and you can connect with them, and the ad-libbing. That's really what I love about performing is it's just the things that will come up and the little flub ups, or the not necessarily flub ups, but the opportunities to take something in a different direction that you may have not practiced or intended,
Right.
and it
Right.
actually
So
elevates the game.
Right. So that for me is about being so practiced in your skill that you're able to leave yourself open for real life happening. You see, because both what you and I are doing is we're creating an illusion. We're creating an illusion. If I'm up there speaking, I'm creating the illusion that this has happened for the first time, that I've almost never said this before, that these thoughts are coming into my head, right now. I'm creating the illusion of that, much in the same way that I create the illusion right now that I've never ever thought about this stuff before, and this is kind of new and unique. And where that comes from is the practice of that, of the techniques around that. But once you're really practiced in those techniques of creating the illusion that something real is happening, you leave yourself open for something real actually happening. And you're there on stage, or you're there communicating in business or in politics, or delivering your keynote speech or your presentation. And in your head, you suddenly go, wow, this is happening for real. Like, I haven't thought this before. I wasn't expecting that question. I haven't thought this. And you're truly in that moment. And the only reason you can be in that moment is because you've practiced creating the illusion of all the other moments, essentially. And that's very different from, many of the speakers who I see coming on stage who have practiced, and it's still a script in their head. It's still a script in their head. And immediately you get this instinct. It's not even instinct, instinctually and cognitively, I could leave this speech and nobody would notice. They don't even know I'm here. This will be exactly the same tomorrow. They've rehearsed every move, every word, every pause. They haven't left room for real life to actually happen to them. And it's hollow. It's hollow. It's not massively bad. It's just not art. It just doesn't have. It's just life isn't there. Just like you have seen, and I've seen many magicians, whereby it's well executed, but it's hollow. It has no life in it. It has no moment for mistakes. It has no moment for surprise. And then we've all seen brilliant performers, brilliant magicians, who you just go, God, this isn't even about the trick or the illusion. This is about us being together in the room together. The illusion and the trick is an excuse, which is brilliant. Like this is just an excuse for me to be with a really interesting human being.
You couldn't have said it better, because when I'm performing, I feel it an honor to have the audience, because without the audience, nothing magical happens. You could be on a blank stage and you could do the illusions, you could practice it, but it is so boring. The real magic, the excitement that happens is the interactions you have with the audience. And that's the fun part for me. And I'm sure it's for you, when you're on stage speaking or performing, you could be on stage for 2 hours and that feels like 5 minutes, because you are so in the now and in present. There's nothing else distracting you ever. So
yeah, it's interesting in that. To that point of doing it on your own. The universe does not care that you pretended to make a coin disappear. Just doesn't it keeps on spinning with nothing ever changes. It couldn't. The universe and the gods could not care less. You had the illusion of a coin disappearing. There is nothing more minuscule and meaningless than that. There really isn't.
Yep.
But to be there with somebody where they experience the wonder of that, and to create the wonder of that for somebody, just like for me to be on stage and create the moment where their mind goes, wow, so you can move your body in a certain way and it has an effect. And look, it had an effect on me. And they go, wow, you just changed me on purpose right now. You changed the way I was thinking. You changed the way I was feeling. You did that on purpose. You're up there and you affected me on purpose, and it worked. It happened to me. And they instantly feel that connection, and they go, wow, we can change each other. We can have an effect on each other. That's a really empowering moment. When they feel that they can affect themselves as well, that's a really empowering moment. And that's really what it's about. It's not about the content. It's about the effect of the content. Just as it's not about the trick or the illusion. It's about the effect of that on people. That's where the real magic is, for sure.
100%. Well, I'm sure you've had people ask you, well, you're doing these techniques to, say, build trust or improve communication. Is it genuine? Isn't it kind of manipulation? And I'll let you speak to that. But, certainly in terms of my perception, I know a lot of people who have a genuine heart. They want to be better communicators. They want to connect with patients and their colleagues, but they don't know what they're doing right or wrong. And so when they have their hands down in the grotesque plane, where they look so rigid and they look scared, but their heart really is to connect with people and make things better. And so if you could just speak to that.
Yeah. So first of all, yes, absolutely. It is absolutely manipulative. I make no excuses for it. Manipulation is a fantastic thing. But listen, the primary reason why we have this big neocortex is so we can manipulate, is so that we can manipulate and be dexterous and move things with our hands in delicate and big ways. And also the neocortex helps us for sure with this language, and language is a manipulation. With language, what we do is we take the world, the universe around it, and we abstract it down into manageable pieces called words, and we string those words together. But the words are not the thing. This is, I give you the menu, not the meal, but the words can be so powerfully manipulative that you think sometimes that the menu is the meal. It's enough for me to tell you something without you actually seeing it, for you to believe it to be true. And that's an extraordinary thing. And in my understanding, there is nothing else on the planet that can do that to the extent that we do it. So human beings are manipulative, and it's a good thing. It's why we have this big brain. This big brain is hard to get out of a mother, because it has to grow so big before, and it means we can't walk when we're born, because parts of the brain have had to become so big that we haven't been able to fully develop. Okay, so all that pain of childbirth, why? So we can be manipulative. Now, we can do it for good reasons, or we can do it for bad reasons. And you as individuals out there, you have to decide. That's up to you. I can't tell you what's good or bad. Your bad is my good. My bad is your, it depends on where you are, who you're with, and what results you're trying to get, and how much we come into conflict with each other as human beings. But essentially, yes, we are all going to manipulate. Now, are we going to do it on purpose, or are we going to do it by accident? Because most of the time we're doing it by accident. So your physician, back in your description, who has the heart to have a great trustworthy bedside manner, has the heart to want to influence and persuade people to do the right thing, to take their medication, to take their advice. Okay. But they have their hands down by their sides in what I call the grotesque plane. And so they can seem disinterested, tired, indifferent to the advice that they're given, but they have the heart for it. They're manipulating their patients by accident into being indifferent to them, to having a negative attitude towards them and their advice. They are manipulating them by accident. So I just go, can we do it on purpose? Like, what result do you want? Because if you want a certain result, you're going to have to do certain actions. And it's not like we don't know the actions. I know the actions to do. I can give you the actions and you can do them or not do them. And listen, I don't care. It's not my life. It's yours. Do whatever you like. You know, if you're a physician, you're probably going to be okay. Like you put in a lot of work. You know, there aren't too many physicians on the planet. We always have a lack. Yeah. So you're going to find something to do, but would you like to do it really well and affect people? If you do, you might want to do some behaviors on purpose. And for those, you might want to choose your behaviors and choose your body language.
Well, the best clinicians, occupational therapists, physiotherapists, and any person, nurses who I've ever worked with, whether they do it consciously or unconsciously, I see they do use great body language, and they know how to do it. But one of the things, I mean, we'll talk about some of the specifics, but you really did change some mistakes. Maybe we'll talk about it now. I remember when you gave us this one exercise when two people are sitting in front of each other and they're talking, and one person says, okay, can I tell you something really, important, or it's almost like a secret? And I think the tendency is you lean, as a listener, you lean in forward because you think, oh yes, I'm all ears. But instinctively, it has the opposite effect.
Right. Right. So with the right proximity or the wrong proximity, too close a proximity, when you move right in, it can get into personal or intimate space, and that can cause some negative assumptions, depending on the relationship. But on the whole, the risk of negative assumptions can go up the moment you close in on somebody's space, somebody's territory, especially if they're injured in some way. Yeah, because when you're injured, your brainstem, or what many people might call the amygdala, can be very overexcited at that point, and it's hyper alert and looking out for risk. And oh no, somebody came in really close. Okay, high risk, high risk, high risk. So sometimes it has the opposite effect. So what we might want to do, and now that's not to say, hey, you're going to tell somebody something intimate, lean right back, because. But what you can do is just more open body language, just something more open, even just opening out the face rather than, I want to tell you something really secret. Opening out the face and going, I want to tell you something really secret, is more inviting. But really, it's about risk and reward. Is that there's certain signals in the body that will indicate to others that something is low risk, and certain signals in the body that could indicate to them that it's high risk. Doesn't mean it is low risk or high risk, but there are signals that are more likely to trigger them with those assumptions. And their assumptions will always feel very, very real. Whether they're correct or incorrect, they're totally designed to feel absolutely real and absolutely correct, regardless of how they are. So yeah, there are often some things that we as communicators do which don't get the results that we're wanting, but actually they tend to feel good for us. It's rather like designing an illusion, designing a magic trick that works from your angle, but doesn't ever work from the audience's angle.
Oh, there is one illusion I do, which I don't like to do actually, because it seems like the solution is so straightforward, but audiences love watching it, and so I do it because because I do it for them, because they enjoy it. They enjoy the complexities of it. They enjoy the audience interaction of it, and so I always keep that in mind. Is that what is it that the audience has liked, and and I've done it so many times. I know that they like this, so
Right.
I totally hear you.
Well, so there was one of my key trainers and mentors, and a man that I went on to work with a huge amount in theatre. Great theatre practitioner called John Wright, undoubtedly one of the top visual theatre artists in the whole of Europe, if not the world. We worked alongside each other for years and years and years and years. When I was training with him, and when we'd be performing, he would stand in the audience and just be shouting out, "It's for the audience! It's for the audience! You do it for the audience! Do it for the audience! It's for the audience! It's not for you! Nobody cares about you! It's for the audience! It's for the audience!" And that was a great education, in that it just kept your mind going. Okay, my experience of this doesn't matter, or certainly doesn't matter nearly as much as the experience and the angle that the audience have on this, the optics that the audience have. And also just, where should my loyalty be placed here? My loyalty must be placed in the position of the audience. I'm doing it only for them. I had another, I worked with undoubtedly one of the greatest practitioners of theatre alive today, a guy called Philippe Gaulier, and he's a very nasty man, and very grouchy, he's the guy that Sacha Baron Cohen trained with, and so the only reason you have Sacha's characters is because of Philippe Gaulier. Anyway, so we'd be with Philippe, and he'd be doing something, very deep and personal on stage, and he'd be going, nobody cares that your grandmother is dead. He totally wanted to get you out of this sense of importance in yourself, and get you involved in the importance of the audience's experience. So yeah, all of that to say, the more we put, any of us, whether it's in business and politics or delivering speeches or keynotes or presentations, the more we put ourselves in that audience position and think to ourselves, I'm doing it for them, it's only for them that I do this, the more connection we get, and the better the communication is, and the more interesting it is and entertaining it is.
Absolutely. Well, as clinicians and people, when anybody who works in healthcare, we talk about patient-centered care. So we're always looking at what is it that benefits them and their expertise, and how can you make an impact? How can you improve the trust so that there is open flow of dialogue? Because studies have shown that patients won't tell their healthcare provider all the information. I think, I don't know, I don't forget the exact number, but 30% of patients will actually tell their healthcare provider that they're taking their medication, but in reality they're not, because they don't want to let them down.
So ask me if I've been taking my medication.
Okay. Mark, have you been taking your medication?
Yeah, I have. Because I'm lying. I'm totally lying. Like here it is. It's down here. Okay, it's down here. But I've forgotten it already today. I forgot it yesterday, the day before. Look, I'm not going to die, but it will make my life better in the future. But I can't work that out. My brain can't work that out right now. Right now, I'm trying to deal with life right now, and so I will lie to you, and I'll lie pretty well. Like if you're smart, you'll know I'm always lying, but regardless of how good a liar I am, but I will lie to you. So it is your job to persuade me, like influence me, manipulate me, do something that's going to help change my mind so I can be better, because I can't do it on my own. I need you. I need you to help me. And I think, and I'm sure it's been your experience as well, there are many physicians who do better than that than others, who are better persuaders, who are better manipulators of people's minds in order for them to do what's better for them in some very cognitively dissonant worlds. Like I'm not able to tell if medicine or specific medicines make me better. I have to trust the science, and I trust doctors and I trust science, and it's even difficult for me. So I really feel that physicians do an extraordinary job because they study, especially some of the general practitioners in that area. Such a huge amount of knowledge and experience, so they can walk into an aspect of a clinic and just go, okay, what's up? Tell me about it. Okay, I think it's this.
Yeah.
Like, how do you know that? Like, and then how do you go from that one to that one and know that one as well? Such vast knowledge. But the more that they can improve their ability to then influence and persuade patients and politicians and general society with their knowledge, the better they can get at that, the better everything gets for everybody.
What do you think are the top one or two mistakes that clinicians make when they're trying to build trust that they could improve on very quickly?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one, isn't it? Because I haven't seen enough, to really know this for sure. I haven't seen enough. But what I know from my own experience is clinicians are so under pressure, hurried by their system, that it's very easy for them to come into the room with you very much with the feeling that they left the last thing with. Which is, or that transition, with very much the feeling of the transition. So it's almost like they're coming in with the feeling of their movement from scene to scene, not coming in and projecting to you instantly the vision that they want you to have of them. There's like this transition, they hurry in, you feel like they've come from somewhere important or hurried or tricky or difficult, and then they hit you, and then they do their transition. And then after a while, you're like, oh, I think this is going to be okay. I think they're quite actually caring for me. I think they're quite interested in me. But that wasn't the first impression that I got. And understand, I'm pretty good, because I've made it my practice to suspend judgment about people when I first see them, because reading behavior and body language is part of what I do, assessing that and analyzing that. And one of the first things I have to do is suspend all judgment and go, I don't know what this is. Who knows where they've come from? That's not about me. That's about something else. So I think there's an argument that says, can you get your transition over with in the moment of transition? And just before you come into the room with me or the space with me, can you make a quick decision and create the performance of who you want to be in front of me right now that will best influence and persuade me to make the right choices with you?
I hear you 100%. One of the things that I took away when you did the keynote was how our desks and our furniture really hinders the communication. And I recently moved to a new clinic, and the clinic I was in before inherently allowed me to have the open. I didn't have any obstruction when I was talking with the patient, but in this new clinic setting, I saw the way it was set up, and basically I more or less would have to have my back against them or to the side of them. And I actually bought a new desk and reconfigured the room because of what you taught, and just having that barrier between the patient automatically puts you, like you said, behind the eight ball. So that was a big learning. I know the people on the table, when the doctors on the table, they're like, oh my gosh, I better rearrange my clinical exam rooms because I'm totally, blocking the patient and not paying attention to them. So
so I work with physicians around that all the time, which is often their office space, which is also part of their clinic space, is more set up for administration than it is the patient. Now, I mean, you and I both totally understand that in modern clinics, the administration of it is actually quite an important part. The keeping of records, it really helps people. And the better that record keeping is, and the more universal it gets, the healthier all of us will be. So it's very important that you input the data. But often the room has been more set up for that, for your benefit within that process. And it has negated sometimes, to an extent, the situation of the patient. And so it's just always worth looking at that setup and going, how much does this help my client, my patient right now? And often, just as you said there, we set up blocks. And what blocks will often do is block off vision of you and your nonverbal behavior. And when that happens, the viewer defaults to more negatives. There's a good generalization. There's a very good gamble. The less I can see of you, the more barriers between you and me, the more negative I'll get around my assumptions about you, and therefore my assumptions about your help for me. So it will actually, the more I can't see you, the more I'll go, well, I don't know whether that drug is really the one for me. I don't know whether that therapy is really going to help me. As a good gamble, I'd win gambling. The less I can see of you, the less good I think your help is. It's a pretty good gamble that I'm going to win every time, pretty much.
Well, so can you
open up that space,
Can you talk about, the truth plane? Because that's a huge learning. That's a big area to immediately improve that. So, because I believe you're the one who created that concept.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. So the gesture plane system was first written down by me in my book, Winning Body Language, which is almost, a decade old now. So, but I've been working on this for at least a decade before that, thinking about what are the major levers, the simplest and biggest levers that affect somebody else's perceptions of us. And I'd found the horizontal height at which the hands are had a fundamental difference and uniquely similar difference across the planet as to the perceptions we get of somebody. So an example of this, and by the way, I'll give everybody a URL right now, bit.ly/winning keynote. And you can put that in any show notes, bit.ly/winning keynote. If you go there, there's some free training for you on this gesture plane system, video training.
I'll put that in the show notes.
Pick up that video training and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. But the truth plane, for example, is the horizontal gesture plane at navel height. So that's exactly at belly button height. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to stand here and you won't see my face, but you're going to see my hands moving and just get an approximation of how trustworthy I might be just by seeing this part of my body. And now all I'm going to do is hang my hands down by my sides. I'll still keep on gesturing there, but now you can't see them as often. You can't see. If I was sitting at a table with my hands down and tucked into the table, you won't be able to see it. And all I'm going to say is, you can trust me. This therapy is really going to help you. And now I'm going to say, you can trust me. This therapy is really going to help you. Yeah. You can trust me as a physician. I'm here to help you. You can trust me as a physician. I'm here to help you. And is it very clear that one of me is more trustworthy than the other?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And now I can bring my hands up here where you can see them, and I can say, look, you can trust me. I'm here to help you as a physician. Now my hands are up at chest height, essentially. And my guess is, well, it's quite exciting, but it's maybe not as trustworthy. So with hands at exactly navel height, especially with open palm gestures, that's not essential, but it's real icing on the cake. Open palm gestures at navel height will win a huge amount of trust. So that's what we call the truth plane, and I coined that term and designed the gesture plane system, and all of that can be found in Winning Body Language. But as I say, go to that bit.ly/winning keynote and pick up the training there for free.
Nice.
Yeah, in fact, that training was first of all designed for physicians.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
I did not know that.
Yeah, that video training for physician leaders. I was working with one of the drugs companies, actually with a drug for hepatitis, and a particular form of hepatitis, and they were trying to help their physician leaders get the message across to other physicians and their patients. And so I was helping them with trust and credibility of getting that message across. And the training that you'll go to there was originally specifically designed for physicians.
No, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, when you talk about the plane up here, like I think this was you call the passion plane.
The passion plane,
right?
Yeah.
And doing it the right amount or the right level, I imagine is good. But then you see, like you talk about this in the book, when you do it too much or you're up there, you can look a bit crazy or a bit, it can be overwhelming. And I think that, like what you were talking about when I at the conference, was that this is really like an attack position, right? So then you feel kind of, oh, is he going to attack me? And right. So I found that plane system so helpful.
So there's more risk up in the passion plane simply because we know when hands go higher, heart rate and breathing rate go up. That's just the natural effect of hands being sustained at chest height. There's just more for the heart to do against gravity,
Yeah.
And so we get more excited by this. A human being more excited can be more risky, depending on the emotion that's going with it. Look, a human being that is very happy and excited can be as risky as one that's very aggressive and excited, simply because they may have both lost track of reality somewhat. If we follow either one of them, if either one of them becomes the leader, or there's a risk that they're not thinking accurately. So this can be exciting, but it's not necessarily that trustworthy. And look, there's no bad body language. There's just results that you wanted or didn't want. Yeah, that's all. There's no bad body language. There's either the effect that you wanted or an effect that you didn't want. And if you're not getting the right effect, you change the behavior. Well, the key is what behaviors do you change to? And that's my skill and my art is knowing the behaviors that are most likely to get you the effect that you want. And that I've investigated, possibly more than anybody else I know for for sure, and certainly many people would say more than anybody else for sure, is that I'm looking at what exactly do you want to do that will have an effect. So you were saying about stuff that gets confusing. So if I do asymmetrical gestures up in the passion plane here, which I'm doing right now, so one side of my body is never really doing what the other side is doing, you'll notice this is already pretty confusing for you. But if I just make them symmetrical, if I just make them symmetrical, it's less confusing. Now, why is that? It's because your brain wants to look at both sides of the body. And if each side is doing something different from the other side, and that keeps changing, that's a lot of neural load. That's a lot for your brain to try and comprehend. And because it keeps changing, it can't make a good snap judgment, because those snap judgments have to keep changing. So what does it do? It just gives up. It just goes, I don't get this. I don't get this. And when it goes, I'm confused, when your instinct goes, I'm confused, it doesn't go, oh, good, I'm confused. It goes, well, that's really bad that I'm confused. So then it makes its judgment. It goes, this is bad. This is a bad person for me. They have bad content for me. They have bad advice for me. And the reality is I could be the expert that you needed. It's just my gestures keep changing asymmetrically, and it's high neural load for your brain. Your brain gave up. It made me bad. It took the wrong decision, but maybe I should be a better communicator. If I really want to help you, maybe one of the things I want to do is concentrate on clearer, more symmetrical gestures. Well, back to our earlier point, that's manipulative, because I'm doing it on purpose. I'm not being the me that I was before. That is totally okay with being asymmetrical. I'm being a structured me. I'm being the me that creates an illusion on purpose in order to get a purposeful result from you. And the problem is that could get a good result or a bad result. I'm trying to get a good result from you. So I'm doing it for good reasons. So morally, from my point of view, I'm in the clear. But there'll be people who do this from other people's points of view for bad reasons, and morally, from their point of view, they won't be in the clear.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a difference between the place where you're coming from and, manipulation or being manipulative. I think it has a negative connotation. I mean, for me, it still rings that tone.
Sure, of course.
But if you're really, say you're trying to help somebody and you're doing these asymmetric gestures, just with you doing it there, me watching you do it, it felt uncomfortable to watch. I mean, just in those few seconds, I could feel my brain say, okay, I want to leave this conversation. So it's absolutely, I never really experienced that until I saw you do it just now.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, let me just do this and let you know what I'm going to ask you to do is take a small amount of Synthroid every day. You won't feel any effect from that, right now, but over many, many years, it's going to make things a lot better for you and could improve, your chance of heart attack in the future.
Oh gosh,
okay?
I've seen people talk like that. I've seen people talk like that. Yeah.
All I'm going to do is be symmetrical now. What I'm going to ask you to do is take a small amount of Synthroid every day. And though you won't feel any effect from that really on a daily basis, what will happen is in the future, it will absolutely improve your chances of your heart being really functional and healthy.
Oh, that's brilliant. Brilliant.
So, and notice what happened is I started to choose my words better as well. But all I was doing was being symmetrical on purpose. And that might not be naturally how I speak. So I'm not being the authentic me. I'm being a structured me, but I'm being a structured me on purpose in order to get a very authentic goal. That of, I want people to get better. And also, I'm still doing no harm. I'm still first doing no harm. So I think, as a communicator, you need some strong values to keep a certain compass,
Well,
but outside of that, I think you kind of, if you want to be a really great communicator, you've got to do whatever is necessary in order to get the results that you want. Think about those great illusionists that you and I will have seen. And when you find out, or you get a hint of what it is they're doing to create that illusion, you kind of go, wow, they pushed it that far. They'd really do that. They'd really take it. That must have taken so long and so much energy and so much money, so much effort to create that moment for the audience. But they're willing to do it. They're willing to sacrifice all of that to get that moment. That's why they're great. They're willing to do whatever is necessary to create the effect, even, without giving too much away. Especially if a magician or illusionist says, look, I've got no plants in the audience. There are no camera tricks in this. The first thing you expect is there are plants in the audience. There are camera tricks.
Yes.
They're lying to you.
Yes, 100%.
They're lying to you.
Mm-hmm.
Why are they lying to you? Because by lying to you, they can create a beautiful moment of wonder that could affect your life, that could make you understand that the world is much greater than you thought it was. And they're willing to blatantly lie to you to get that moment. They are artists.
Well, you know what I always say about magicians and illusionists, we're, in one sense, we're the most honest, because we are clear about that we're out to deceive you, but for entertainment. But the whole purpose is to have that sense of wonder. And that's what movies are. You watch or a book, you're escaping to a different set of feelings and excitement, because on a day-to-day level, we get so caught up in the mundane and the rituals. And like, if you look at a cell phone, like it's the things you can do. You can talk to somebody, on the other end of the earth through this little square little box that you have in your hand. That's spectacular. Cool. Yeah. But we forget that. And then you have to go see a magic show, or you see a magic trick, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing, because we've taken them to a childlike state. So I think that's
right. Well, I think the thing is that again, you've reminded them of being alive. You've reminded them of the wonder of being alive right now and the magic of it. And it's happened in front of them. Or sometimes you're like, some of the best magic, it happens in your hand, doesn't it? You put something in the audience's hand, and they're like, have you got it? Yeah. It was gone. So the mystery, the magic, the wonder happens in their own flesh somewhere. And so you are creating this through lies and deceit. You're creating the truth of this moment of wonder inside them, and absolutely it is well worth the deceit and the lie for sure, because otherwise we're in quite a wonderful world, but we can often forget it. And it's the point of art and magic. Magic is a when well done, when brilliantly done, is an art like any other. It's the purpose of art to remind us that we're alive. And you'll have hit that moment for many audiences, and your performances will have hit that moment for you when you've gone, wow, I'm alive right now, and they're alive, and it's that moment of wonder. It connects us. That's the thing. It connects us as human beings. So it's important, this word entertainment, because you mentioned it back then, to entertain, and entertain, like the word manipulation, it gets a bit of a bad rap. It's just entertainment. Well, entertainment is a beautiful medieval Latin word from medieval French Latin, entretenir, which just simply means to hold together. It simply means to connect, that we hold the idea together. When you truly entertain me, when you entertain me, and we as the audience are entertained, we hold together. We have the same idea, the same moment of wonder all together, and suddenly we go, we're not alone. We have others like us. It is not a lonely world. That's an extraordinary thing to be able to do. And all great artists entertain. That's what they do. They create this moment where we all hold together as social mammals, as human beings, and we suddenly go, it's not just me. That on my own. There are lots of us.
That is beautifully said. I've never heard that explained that way, but that's beautifully said. Mark, I know that you are on a little bit of a time crunch, and so I want to kind of ask you this one question. I want to make sure I ask this because one, you're highly successful. You've consulted business leaders of Fortune 500 companies, presidents and, actors. I mean, you've made a huge influence in people's lives and you're really like the number one in your field. But I think there is perhaps a misconception that successful people they don't have any failures or they don't have any setbacks. Do you have a particular failure or an embarrassment that maybe was catastrophic for you, but you turned it around, or you thought of it in a better way? Do you have something?
Yeah, for sure. So the biggest one is I'm dyslexic. I can't read or write very, very well. So that caused me huge amounts of failures at school when I was a kid. I mean, just abject failures. The ability to be in certain areas utterly useless. I mean, just completely so not even below average, like below the very lowest possible.
Wow.
So yeah, I've experienced very much what it's like to experience that you absolutely are a complete failure at something, and that's been a strong influence on my life, and has caused me, like many other dyslexics, to find other ways of getting places, some sneaky ways of getting around stuff. We're good, dyslexics are good at coming up with cheats, with ways of getting around stuff, with novel and interesting solutions to get to the place that others naturally are in. And because we find these novel ways, sometimes we find that we suddenly excel in that area because the sneak is actually innovative. It's nobody's thought of doing it that way before. So a lot of my innovation comes from me finding the sneaky ways of getting stuff done because I can't do them in the way that other people would often do them.
I did not know that about you. I mean, that's I know that there are some amazing people who have done amazing things, who have dyslexia, and they said very much the same thing. It has actually kind of forced them to think about the world and accomplishing things in a different manner. So
yeah. So not only do we find innovative ways of getting stuff done, but just the way our mind is structured and the brain is hacked together just means that we actually experience the world in quite a different way as well. So not only do we find sneaky ways, but we're looking at it differently as well in the first place. So my advice to anybody is if you are out there and you're dyslexic, keep going. Keep it up.
Nice.
And if you need solutions for whatever you're doing, and you haven't got one yet, go and find a dyslexic, anybody who's dyslexic, and just go, look, here's the problem. I guarantee They'll come up with something. They might not come up with a good solution, but they'll come up with something, and it will be different from what you've already thought of. It's worth a go.
Yeah.
It's always worth a go. Ask a dyslexic.
That's good advice. That's a good advice, Mark. I want to ask you a few rapid fire fun questions just so we get to know a little bit about you. If you were to put a message, say, on a billboard that you think is important, what would that be?
Yeah, so I think it would be, something I just intimated back there, which was stick at it, keep going, stick at it.
That is good. That's
good.
It.
Keep on going. Many of the leaders that I've worked with who've been extraordinary in what they've managed to achieve, and I've always asked, so how have you managed this? What have you done? How did you get? And this is from people who've created extraordinary businesses and innovations and become literally world leaders, literally running countries. Every one of them basically says, you just stay with it. You just keep on going. You just don't give up. You keep on going. You fail and you keep on going and keep on going and keep on going. And partly because other people will drop out. They don't have the staying power. And it doesn't mean you're the best. It's just you didn't give up. And it's hard. That's really hard. It's really hard advice to take, but at least it's simple. It's simple.
But you know what? It's good advice. It's really good advice. I mean, that's what, I tell my kids, just stick at it. Keep on at it and you'll find a breakthrough,
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. I often talk to people about the break. They go, when am I going to get my break? When will it break for me? It's like, okay, so you take both ends of the stick and you keep on pushing and pushing.
That's a good metaphor.
Pushing. And eventually, it breaks, but it's really hard work. And there's points where you're just going, that's a really wet, bendy stick. It's not, all I'm doing is bending the stick. Like, no, it will start to crack and snap at some point, but you gotta keep at it. That
is great. Who dead or alive would you like to have dinner with?
Just my friends and immediate family, just the people actually who I actually constantly have dinner with. dinner as usual, please.
Well, that's an honest answer. That's an honest answer.
I wouldn't, who wants Churchill round? I mean, he'd be fun because he's going to get very drunk. He'd be fun, but ultimately, no, just my wife Tracy and the kids and all our best friends. Nice. It wouldn't be a massive crowd.
Well, that's a straightforward answer. I was expecting something crazy, but that's a good answer.
No, I got nothing crazy for it. I've had dinner with a lot of extraordinary people.
I guess you have.
It's good. It's good once. Mm-hmm. Once is good.
Yeah, I guess the novelty wears off after a while.
But after that, I think they either become your friends or they don't. Mm-hmm. And I'd rather spend the time with the friends.
I'm 100% with you there. 100%. What are your hobbies? Like, what do you do when you're not out teaching? What's the day in, what's the fun side of you?
Yeah, so I work a lot, so there's not a lot of time. But here's what I do. I love to cook. And
any particular cuisine or
all kinds, especially so different cuisines, different techniques. I'll concentrate on a technique for a bit. I might concentrate on a cuisine and try and get that right. Now, obviously, the major thing I love to cook being English, born in England, like I know yourself.
Yeah.
Obviously, I love cooking a curry.
So you love Indian food. Well, my wife is the best Indian cook ever.
I'm sure. Well, people's wives always are.
No. I'm actually very I don't say it, but I've had eaten Indian cuisine, different places.
Yeah.
And I say it with true honesty. She's probably not going to watch this anyway, so I'm not getting any brownie points. But she is I think a very gifted chef. Like she really knows what she's doing.
I'm now thinking of making a journey up to your end of.
You know what? You're always welcome. She makes amazing chicken curry and with beer. I mean, I tell you, there's nothing better than that. Yeah,
that's I was actually at a talk last week. Madha Jaffrey came to Toronto. Yeah, and so Madha Jaffrey is like a big hero of mine, just in terms of cooking. I mean, she revolutionized cooking, certainly in the UK. Certainly turning people on to more of the reality of and the hugeness of Indian cuisine, rather than just most people's appreciation in the UK, which is a good appreciation, is really Bangladeshi versions of curry. And of course, curry is kind of an English, idea, of it was the British idea of it. I mean, great, fantastic. I mean, again, without India and without that influence, just British food would be terrible.
Well, the national food of England is Indian food.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Which is really, quite, surprising. Well, not surprising if you've eaten Indian food, like good Indian food. So, sometimes I'll go to a restaurant and somebody, well, you don't want that butter chicken? I said, no, I totally know what it's going to be like. Right, it's not, when you've had the best, you just can't settle for certain dishes. And so that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's an open invitation for you to come to my house anytime.
Fantastic.
And you and your wife bring your kids.
Yeah.
I mean, how old are your children?
So 13 and 11. So Lex, my son, is about to turn, he'll be 14 in October, and Stella, my daughter, just turned 11.
Well, they're literally about the same age as my kids. And Fantastic. My son is a big soccer player. My daughter's 13. Okay. If you guys bring the family, and we'll definitely
have to make a journey up there for that for your wife's cooking, and for hanging out, for sure.
Well, you know what, we do these big parties, and people are always asking, when can I come to your house for dinner? It's like I said, I got to check with my wife, but she loves entertaining. She loves
some
cooking.
Friends of ours have a Diwali party.
Oh yes.
And, oh man, it's so good. Like, it's the highlight of the year for me. And I go around, because you could imagine. I mean, it's just the food is incredible, and the hospitality is amazing. And I go around, and every time I go, this is the highlight of my year. It's fantastic to be here. And I don't think they can ever quite believe it. They think, oh, you've got to be making this up. And I'm going, no, I'm being honest. It's like the best party of the year.
I love good food. And that's a weakness of mine. So I am 100% with you.
Yeah.
Mark, I really appreciate the time that you took today. I would love to have you come back in the future, because there's so much to learn from you still. Like, I mean, we're just grazing the surface.
For sure. I'm
going to put a link to the books that you have produced. And if anybody wants to get a hold of Mark, they can go to your website just truthplain.com.
Truthplain.com. Go find me there for sure.
And it's plain as in Plane.
That's right. Plain as in Plane. Yeah.
And
truth as in truth. Truthplain.com. All one word.
Do you have an ask from our audience, or any speakers that might be listening? I mean,
listen, I've just got one ask, which is go and get that training that I gave you the URL to, bit.ly/winning keynote. I've got no other ask than that, which is go and see what I've produced for people just like you there. If you have people who you think it would be useful for, give them the URL. If I'm giving you this, it's because you can distribute it, and the training's out there for you to take advantage of. So the only thing I want is go and take advantage.
And it's free.
Of that training. It's free. It's free. So go and take advantage of it. It's the training that I give to an audience when they've seen me deliver a keynote. And because, we've spent such a long time talking together for you and the audience here, it's like you've been in a keynote. And so, though we were, making this one up as we went along, So go and get the training. You're very, very welcome to it. That's my only ask. And if you enjoy that and you've enjoyed this, of course, link in with me. You'll find me at LinkedIn, Mark Bowden. You'll find me on YouTube, Mark Bowden. You'll find me on Twitter at TruthPlane. Go to the website, hunt me down, track me down, ask me questions. I'm always
and watch his TED Talk. I mean,
for sure.
I saw your TED Talk again last night and not only is it educational, but you're a very funny man. I mean, it was one of the best TED Talks I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Mark, again, thank you so much. This was such a great honor, and I just had a blast, and I hope we'll connect again soon.
It's been a great interview. Thanks very much for having me. Thanks for your great questions. And for sure, anytime you want to do this again, I'm open to it. You know where to find me.
Thank you, Mark.